Because I think that sometimes that people are, well, if only I had that camera or that gear, I could have done this better. Like, no, just use what you have. And by having too many tools, you waste all the time trying to decide what tool to use that you miss the moment.
It's more about the cameras are a piece of your toolkit. People ask me about drones all the time. They're like, can you use your drone? Are you going to bring your drone and use it? I'm like, if it tells the story better, if it needs to be used, but I'm not just going to use it just because I have a drone. It's a cool toy. I think it's the mindset behind what you're capturing.
Welcome to the 5'9 Creative Podcast. I'm Katie. Here at 5'9, we believe some of the most powerful stories in the world are happening in places where most people will never see. We'll be talking about storytelling, missions, creativity, and how God is working around the globe. Whether you're a creative, a ministry leader, or someone who simply loves hearing what God is doing, we're glad you're here. Let's jump into today's conversation. Today, we want to talk about some common mistakes that we've seen that new creatives make, and they're really easy to do, but we want to talk about some real world examples on this. So we've got 5 common mistakes that we want to touch on today. Most creative mistakes don't happen because of a lack of talent, but sometimes it's lack of preparation or lack of the correct mindset. And so we want to help you think through these things so that you can avoid these mistakes in the future. Mistake number 1 is falling in love with gear over story. So Evan, why don't you take that away?
I'm a first person example of that. I have fallen into that trap. I've gotten better, but years ago, when I was getting started, I was very inundated with like, okay, if I get this piece of gear, I'll be able to achieve this thing. Or if I have this thing, I'll have this ability. Now, there is a level of balance, like good quality gear. As you grow, I feel like it's kind of like a curve. Like when I first started, I thought the more gear that I got and the more toys that I had and the more variety I had, I would be able to capture more stuff. And now it's almost like the less stuff I have, I can capture more stuff. Because sometimes what I've fallen into the trap of, I've got my newest iPhone, and I've got my action camera, and I've got my Sony a7S III, and I've got my Sony a7 IV, and I've got my whatever the newer, all the different lenses and all the different, I got, drone, and I've got Osmo Pocket type, all these different gadgets. 360 camera, got all these different things. And while all those are cool, you kind of get into like, I've got too many things. Like you're trying to shoot this with this and this with this and this with this, and you're looking at specs and you're looking at all the details and stuff like that. Like I've fallen into that trap myself. And so
like what kind of stuff did you get early on that you regretted?
Oh, I bought this Sony FS100, which I thought was going to be great because I was shooting, this was back in like 2013. I was shooting weddings, and I had a mirrorless, I had a 6D was my first camera, a Canon 6D, and I wanted to go away from the mirrored DSLR setup. And so, and it had a lot of limitations. It was a great camera, but it had a lot of limitations as far as video. It was kind of entry into when video was starting on those cameras.
30 minutes record time?
12, I think. And so I got a digital cinema camera. It was an FS100 Sony. It was like a shoebox with a sensor on the front, and it had a lens, and it was this massive thing. Then I had to have this Pelican. I was shooting weddings on the beach. I was living in Panama City, Florida at the time, and I had to buy this waterproof Pelican case to take it down. I couldn't carry it. Like it was big, but to have the lenses and all the stuff, it had this rig on top of it, which there's nothing against a big rig. Like now there's cameras that are the newer version of that are big rigs, and there's value in those in certain situations. But even now, like I have friends that like they'll get somewhere, they have to build their rig out and things like that. And I can see the validity in that, like in some situations, but if it becomes a burden and inhibits you from getting the shot, there's been so many times I've been places and I've got so much stuff that I'm having to set it up, or I've got too much gear and I'm focused more on the specs than just getting the shot. Or capturing the moment, that it just kind of it loses the.
Well, and because I think that sometimes that people are, well, if only I had that camera or that gear, I could have done this better. Like, no, just use what you have. And by having too many tools, you waste all the time trying to decide what tool to use that you miss the moment.
It's more about it, the important thing is the cameras are a piece of your toolkit. People ask me about drones all the time. They're like, "Can you use your drone? Are you gonna bring your drone and use it?" I'm like, if it tells the story better, if it needs to be used, but I'm not just gonna use it just because I have a drone. It's a cool toy. I think it's the mindset behind what you're capturing is more important than the gear. The gear is important, and understanding your gear and knowing how to use your gear is important, but having all the tools and latest tech and everything is not necessarily. Like this camera right here that we're using here and over here is it's from 2020. It's 5.5 years old, but it's still great. It still works perfectly, and it's not the latest thing, but it's great. So, knowing your gear and knowing the mindset behind it is more important than having the latest
And
tech.
sometimes less is more. I look back and I miss the days that all I had was one camera body and a 35mm lens and a homemade shoulder rig from Conduit at Costco, or not Costco, at Home Depot that I made.
Made out of pipes.
Man, it was so.
I've shot stuff in different countries, and as I go, some places need to be more inconspicuous or whatever, and you're trying to go light. And some of those, it's actually freeing because you just have like one thing, and it's easier, and you can focus more on the story than the tech.
Yep, exactly. Okay, mistake number 2. Trying to copy somebody else. Jeff, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, we'll go with this. And if anybody says they have never done this, they're lying. Because everyone's done a little R&D, rip off and duplicate. Unless you were like the first person on YouTube, I guess. If you were the little. No, Mr. Beast wasn't the first on YouTube. I'm thinking like Charlie Bit My Finger. Like what did they have going?
MySpace.
Yeah, exactly. Like those guys, the OGs. There is some. It's great to look at other people's stuff and to see how they're doing what they're doing. But it's inspiration. Trying to just completely duplicate it and think that because so and so shoots with this big giant gimbal, I have to have the big giant gimbal. No, that was the tool that they used. That obviously, if you saw it and thought it was awesome, that's what they needed to do. But that doesn't mean that's what you have to do. Because with that, a lot of times comes having to spend a whole lot of money that may or may not make you any more money if you're getting into a business mindset. I like to try to tell people, like, get a camera, a lens, get something that's versatile, start there and go with it. And then you'll discover what your your creative mindset, your creative eye leans towards. And maybe you're like, I really like the gimbal shot. Cool, then get the gimbal and roll the gimbal. You like handheld and you feel better that go with that. Don't just change because that's what somebody else is doing and you're like, well, I've got to look that way, I love watching videos that the whole thing's like on a tripod or a monopod and it's so still. I can't do it. I'm too jittery. I'm like, I love that idea, but I'm like, I would not be able to shoot a whole film that way. Like I would be, we got to move something, like I put movement in there. That's just my personal, but I found that out by years of shooting, And so I think that's the thing is trust your instincts more than anything else. And knowing that that's why it's called creative. It's not a science, it's an art. And it's your perspective, So do learn your tech, and learn how to use what you're doing. And a great way to do that is YouTube, and all the great teachers that are out there and learning how to use those things. But just because they show you how to do that doesn't mean that's how you have to do it, or that's how you have to do it to reach this certain production level or what you're trying to create. Let the story really drive you there.
And I think some of that too. It's not just the technical side, but it's the voice side, like having your own voice. Because if you try to copy everybody else's, or you try to be somebody else, it's just not genuine, and it's not utilizing the gifts that God's given you specifically. You're trying to be somebody else. And I think we have impersonator syndrome that's so bad with Instagram and Facebook and all the social media stuff. Like everybody wants to be somebody else. You look at some person that's doing some big thing, and you want to be that person and do exactly what they're doing. create, just having your own voice and
I
developing.
mean, I tried to be Peter McKinnon. I grew my hair out
I know.
long and everything, and
He cut his. That's why you
and
cut
he
yours.
cut his. Yeah, he saw me that I cut mine, and so
But I mean,
cut
that's the thing. Everybody sees Peter McKinnon or Casey Neistat, and they started vlogging because Casey did it. But it's like, you're not him. Like, he did something different. That's why people loved it. So do something different, and let your voice
or just
speak on its own.
do what's right for you.
Right.
Don't
let your voice speak on its own.
Yeah, yeah. If that's you, I remember years ago I had some people reached out that they had a they had a huge YouTube following, and they didn't like the space that they were in. I'm not going to say who it was, because they were pretty big, but they were like, we want to rebrand. And I just said, I think this is a terrible idea. And, because it was just two guys, and they had a great following. They didn't really like the space they were in, because they were like, oh, we like what these guys are doing. Looks way cooler. They literally used the word cool. And I was like, you have a great thing going. You do not need to change what you're doing. This is it's you, it's who you are. Like, just own it.
Yeah.
So.
And part of that too, I think, can be sometimes feeling pressured we have to be careful not to feel pressured by your clients to change what you like to do. So like and this was back when Instagram first came out, but I was shooting a band's cover art and stuff for their album. And so we sat down, we were talking about what we wanted it to look like. And they were like, we really want classy Instagram is what we want. And I was like, that's not me so much. And so we were able to come to a good resolution of like what my style was and what I felt like would give them longevity, as opposed to slapping those early days of Instagram filters over the top, So it is about being true to who you are and what God's calling you to do, and sticking with that.
All right, number 3 is neglecting audio. Katie, what's the audio? What do people neglect?
That is unfortunately something that every videographer eventually learns, because it is, especially being a videographer, your emphasis is video. That's what you like to do the most of the time, and it's the cooler part of it. It's the visual part. It's the part that gets the most attention. But if you have bad audio, nobody is going to be able to pay attention. And that is something that I learned early on. There's plenty of times that either I would just mess up, either not record good audio. We were doing a camp video one time, and we had worked all day on this stupid camp video, and I had a Rode shotgun mic that sit on the top of the thing, and it was one of those that you had to actually flip on.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't have it turned on, so the only thing it was getting all day was the camera audio, and we ended up just scrapping the whole thing because the audio was so bad you couldn't pay attention to what everybody was saying, and it was so frustrating to spend all day trying to get that. And it was really funny and all this stuff, but it wasn't any good. We just couldn't use it. And people are much more in tune to the audio than you think that they're going to be. And so it's so important to capture good, clean audio and really not sacrifice that even over your video. People can live with video that's not up to par.
If the audio is good.
If the audio is good, they'll still watch it. And so, for example, we were in Thailand a few years ago, and we had this weird thing. First of all, we were on this grueling schedule of working 15 hours a day in the heat of the Thailand summer, and in an in a room where we had to turn the air conditioning off every time we tried to shoot. It was so loud. And so we're just sweating in there. Everybody's tired, everybody's jet lagged, and we're just trying to grind through this, and we start having these audio issues, and we can't figure out what this buzzing sound is. We were using the DJI Mic 2s, and
which we never had that issue before. Right?
Never had that issue. And so we had the transmitters on the people that we were interviewing, and the receiver was on the camera, and we could not figure out what the problem was. And we would go over and pick up the receiver that was kind of tucked behind the person, and it would stop, and we would put it down and it would start again. And we figured out it was something about, it was kind of an upholstered chair, and it was like the springs on the inside were interfering with this. And so instead of like, at that point, you're like, please, we just want to be
like,
able
oh,
to
we can fix
move
it. We
on.
can
Like,
fix that
we
in
can do
post.
that in post. And so we're like, no, we've got to fix this. And so we literally would sit there and like move it a tiny little bit until it would quit. And we'd say, sit really still, like deliver this part. And so, and there were several times that we had to stop, make adjustments, but it was worth it in the end because we didn't have to scrap any of that.
We were shooting like 250 videos with multiple parts. Like, it would have been a ton of work. It wasn't
have
just
to
one
go back.
interview.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
a lot.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And taking up people's time that we would have to have them come back and reshoot and things like that when we're on a really tight schedule. And so even though things are hard sometimes, even though it might be frustrating that you can't figure out what it is, it's so important to really nail that and get that right. Okay. Mistake number 4 is not listening enough.
What'd you say?
Yeah. Evan, take it away.
I have a habit of doing that just in life. Sometimes I'm talking to people and I'm like, oh, hey, let me tell you about this thing that I did or that we have or that I've experienced with that. You tell me one thing and it starts my mind rolling and I'm like, oh, yeah, I've done all that stuff and I don't talk about it. I do never do that. So I think that thing is hard just in interpersonal relationship and communication with people that you're talking to in life, but also when you're behind the camera and you're interviewing. A lot of times when we're shooting somewhere, we're the person doing the interview and the filming. Like we're running the audio, we're listening to the audio, we're make sure the camera settings are right and the angle's right or whatever, the lighting's right, but then we're also the person that's interviewing the person. Not always, but a lot of times. And so people are often uncomfortable in front of the camera. Most people are not used to staring and talking to a black circle. They're used to talking to people's eyes and having a conversation. Throw the camera, they're like, oh yeah, this is great, I'm super excited. And you put them on the camera and they're like, I don't know how to speak. I forgot what I'm supposed to do. And so they're really uncomfortable. And so the longer the interview goes or the conversation, sometimes it's not an interview, sometimes it's like you've got a script or a talking points and they're talking about things. Yeah. I've had many times that there's been a person who's having a conversation and we're like, all right, that's great. So tell me about this thing. And I was like, okay, we're done. That's good. And I don't do anything. I just kind of lean over and start talking to them or the person that's with me, whatever. We start talking to the person. And they go into the deeper story. And they start talking to us, not to the camera. There's just been a couple of times that I've been like, all right, done. That's what I needed right there. And it was 10 minutes after the interview was over. A mistake I made, I know better, and I still made the mistake. Last year, we were in Burundi shooting some stuff with a doctor, and he was nervous. His first language is French. He's got great English, but his first language is French. And we were in his office, and we were just, people have when you put the camera up, they want to kind of be up. They want to present their information instead of having a conversation sometimes, just out of being uncomfortable. And so he started talking, did a great job, but then the guy, the ministry leader that we were with, and I started talking to him, and I turned everything off, took the mic off, and he started talking to us. And what he said, we're like, do we capture that? I didn't get it. I was like, man, I should have left it rolling. Because what he said in conversation was more vulnerable and more realistic to the things that were going on. And he felt more confident just talking to us. And it would have been great to have captured that. So don't stop recording too early. And don't feel like when there's a pause that you have to fill that pause with conversation. Just let it breathe. Sometimes people just need a moment. And sometimes they'll say the stuff that you really want to hear. Yeah.
One trick that I heard a long time ago is saying at the end, is there anything else that you would like to tell me? And a lot of times they'll be like, no, I don't think so. And it's like, great. But other times you'll have them go, Well, yeah, I didn't get to share this part. Can we talk about this? And it's exactly what you need. And so sometimes even not even just like letting it roll and them not knowing, but actually giving them a physical prompt can be
Sometimes
really
it's
helpful.
being like their therapist, being like, "Well, you said this. Now, how does that make you feel?"
Yeah.
And let them go. Then they can start talking about from their feelings perspective. There's so many different ways the prompts in that. Yeah.
That's where the magic happens. Okay, mistake number 5 is quitting too early. So Jeff, you want to talk about that?
I had people. I mean, I've been telling people this for years. Oh, man, hey, how'd you get started? Like, I'm thinking about getting into it. Like, what do I need to do? Like, and one thing I'm like, don't give up, is because I'm like, you're gonna be terrible at the beginning. And I go the same thing because I used to do music, and people, could you teach me to play guitar? I'm like, no. I don't do lessons. Go take from somebody who gives lessons. And I said, and don't quit. I was like, because you're going to be terrible. I'm like, you're going to have to practice a lot to get good. Like, unless you're Mozart, like, or Beethoven or something, like one of these like musical masterminds that just from probably infancy were like playing the piano and stuff, you're going to have to practice. The same thing with, creating your feel of being a storyteller and a creative in videography or photography. You got to learn the skill, and the only way to learn it is experience. And so you've got to get in. So don't give up just because, oh, well, this was terrible, that was terrible. We, Evan and I had been to, it's called the Wedding Film Retreat a few times, and we would all sit around and watch everybody's first wedding video they had ever done,
and laugh a lot.
And and you look back and you're like, man, and some of the peoples that like. They're very well known and are getting paid a lot of money now to film weddings. And
they're under the table hiding from their work.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeff's got a basketball video.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. That was a church announcement video that was phenomenal. But I mean, the thing is, I learned something from everything. One of the biggest things I learned from was we had been on a mission trip with a youth group I was working with. And we basically we had a team of interns, and we'd all take turns every night making a video and like send it back home, like update of the day. So it's my turn, and you're staying up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. This is before the old autosave feature on, which I don't know, the Premiere still probably doesn't have autosave, but Final Cut didn't back then. And so I had worked for hours, and then it crashed. And so then after that, I had to learn every 3 seconds, Command S, Command S, didn't teach me that, but I didn't quit, I kept going, and I'll tell anybody that, just keep working on your craft. There's so many tools out there that are free now to learn, and then just give yourself, opportunities. If it's, I remember I had got a camera, went out to a state park, I had just got this new camera, I didn't know how to use it. I went out and I'm filming, butterflies and waterfalls, and I've cut a little video together. It's not that great. Nobody's ever seen it, but it was practice, and that helped me down the road.
Well, if you're trying to look at growth, especially on social media and social platforms, it's not going to be instant. You're not going to be getting a million followers. Yeah, it just doesn't work that way. And you've got to you got to grind it out. You got to put in the hours, and you got to just keep putting things out there. That helps you refine what your niches. It helps you refine what works best with the algorithms, and they're changing all the time. Exactly. Yeah. And so it's you got to keep going and not give up on
and
that.
And not be afraid to try things, because there's all the time I'll try I'm like, I got this idea for this shot. I mean, probably at least 9 times out of 10 is a terrible idea, but then that one time it's a great idea, but I tried, it wasn't like I was like too afraid to try. So you just got to try, and sometimes it doesn't work out. That's okay. It's part of the learning process.
One thing too, people, especially in this craft, like in photo and video, people get it, and they get in their mind that like, okay, I'm shifting from this is my hobby to this is my job, and they don't practice it, and they don't play with it, and they don't go out and do the waterfalls and butterflies. And so they're all like only turn the camera on when they're shooting a project, or if they're shooting weddings, or if they're shooting a ministry, or if they're working for an organization. Like they only turn the camera on in those circumstances. And so it becomes a job more than the thing they fell in love with. And so a lot of times people, I think they quit because they lose the love of the craft, or they're not seeing the immediate gratification that they get from social media. There's always those outliers, the people that just post one thing and they get millions of views. But on average, that it's a slow, consistent growth. And so don't quit. I think you gotta find the craft. If it's video, photo, whatever that craft is, what do you love creating? And then don't let it just be turned into a job or to a routine. Still get out and have fun with it and like practice. And if you give up, I think people give up so quick because they're like, I'm tired of doing this. I'm gonna do something else.
Okay, so that is 5 mistakes that we have seen in our own lives and we want to help you avoid. So most of the time that is not because, again, it's not a lack of talent, it's not a lack of willingness, but it's just not paying attention to little things or having the right mindset as we're going through. So most creative success doesn't come from having the best gear, but it comes from being a person that people can trust with their stories.
One of the things we love about storytelling is that the conversation doesn't end when the episode ends. We'd love to hear your thoughts, experiences, and even questions in the comments below. If you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of the 5-9 Creative Podcast.